I want to welcome everyone to our webinar series called Generative Entrepreneur. This is where our business leaders and developers can come to learn how they can accelerate their generative AI applications to the marketplace and deploy those solutions to production at scale. My name is Jason Virtue, and I'm a principal partner solution architect at Microsoft. I work within our global partner solutions team in the Americas, and I work a lot with our system integrators and independent software vendors, helping them build their generative AI applications. Today's webinar series will be for our business leaders to understand the different generative AI use cases and how they can build applications for their customers. We'll kick off the discussion on the state of the generative AI market and understand its health. We'll then jump into the market opportunities and where we can invest to build out those applications across the different markets. We'll then start to define specific use cases and potential ROI for those use cases, jump into the success factors and risks that we need to consider when launching these products to market, and then think through how we monetize those so that we can profit and get the returns that we expect. And lastly, we'll go through different market trends that we will be expecting on the horizon. State of the generative AI market in 2024. I think this is really important because a lot of us have seen some great press, exponential growth in demand and interest when it comes to generative AI. We all know the Gartner hype cycle that they talk about, and we always are worried about, are we starting to head to the valley of disappointment? And what I want to help us understand as business leaders, that valley of disappointment is not going to be tied by this hype cycle. We will not see the AI winter that we saw back in 2010. What we hope to see and what we will hopefully set expectations on is we have seen some incredible growth when it comes to interest in generative AI. We can definitely say it's probably been out of the ordinary, exceptional. But what we all realize is we have a lot of ups and downs. And what we need to think more importantly about is that regression to the mean. That growth curve that we have is a steady, increasing growth curve that's quite healthy for this market. And what we're starting to see is instead of this being more of an exponential hockey stick type of example, we're starting to see this starting to level off a bit. And that leveling off is really helping us start to realize that we are starting to come into a healthy and normal mainstream market. And I think these are going to be things that we really want to highlight. Some evidence and some things I want to reinforce in that expectation is when we talk about a hype curve, we really are talking about unrealized benefits. But what we can say in the generative AI market, when it comes to productivity gains, these are real. And if you use our tools, be it co-pilots made by Microsoft or by other third-party providers, you will start to see some simple things such as literature reviews, some of the great gains that you can start to leverage by doing some simple queries via Copilot versus what you used to do with tools such as Google. Now, a next big thing is the pace of innovation. When it comes to these vendors who are building the different foundation models that sit out there, their launch and release schedules are still as rapid and as quick as they were in the past. We're typically seeing 2 or 3 releases per month, and these releases are enhancements to the existing suite, which means we're not seeing our innovation start to slow down. More importantly, we're starting to discover net new things, major landmark announcements that sit out there on multimodal models. So these foundation models are not just focused on text, but they're starting to go into images where we can use models such as GPT-4/V, put an image into a model, and now out comes the model is a text description of what was in that image and maybe even in that video. So these are some really core reasons for saying that the state of the generative AI market is healthy. But more importantly, we also need to start looking at not just the pace of innovation, but we also need to start looking at that ecosystem and the community that sits around it. And that community, when it comes to their publications of the different research that they've done, we still see that on a weekly, monthly basis at a very rapid pace. Now, for more quantitative study, we can look at a McKinsey report called the Generative AI Breakout Year that was published in 2023. And they talk about the overall AI market showing an adoption rate back in 2017 of 20%. In today's time, in 2023, we can see now a 55% increase. Now, that is not generative AI exclusively. It's all encompassing in the full market. But that, I think, is a great example of where this market is still got potential for growth. Now, one of the core things that sit out there, and there's an economist who did opinion article in Bloomberg that I think has a great title, and I really recommend to read this article. Tyler Cohen has created an opinion piece, and it was titled "The AI Hype Has Subsided, but the Revolution Continues." And I think that's a great way of summarizing the state of the generative AI market. So let's now transition into the marketplace and start to understand how this market looks and the market opportunities. The leadership in the generative AI market is cross industries. All industries are adopting this new technology, and no one industry is on the sidelines as spectators. Not all industries are adopting it at the same rate, but if they discover a great use case, they will invest. We see this in retail, healthcare, manufacturing, agricultural, financial services, and sustainability. Now, in this slide, this is an example of our customer success stories at Microsoft. The stories from the latest quarter are listed in this slide. Each quarter, we publish a new set of customers, and in each quarter, we see a whole new set that appear. Another great example of a healthy AI market. What this slide demonstrates is when you look at the list of marquee accounts, it is a cross industry success story. There's not a given solution that's out there that only uses one use case, or more importantly, is in one industry. We see it as a cross industry solution, which demonstrates the size of this opportunity for our business executives. I want to share a report from IDC called The Business Opportunity of AI. This was a collaboration between Microsoft and IDC that was published back in September of 2023. I want to give you an executive summary of that report and highlight some key findings. Also, I'll share some of my personal stories around these findings. First and foremost, they're talking about 71% of these engagements having real impact in the next 18 months. And I see that as a great number that shows the success rate within the industry when it comes to generative AI applications. Now, I want to caveat that and make sure you realize that is not that 71% of those applications made it to a production state. That's way too high. It's really that 71% of those applications were MVP applications, minimal viable product. That I think is a really great success rate because it really shows the shortcomings that people talk about, talent or the learning curve is not as difficult as people claim it to be. Another big piece here, which is related to time of market, 92% of organizations is saying it's taking less than 12 months. Now, I do think that's a high number. I think these applications, if we're making MVP applications, should not take 12 months to develop them. Obviously, there's a bit of a learning curve that sits out there, so that's factored in, and our businesses need to start to identify those top use cases. So I do think this is a real number, but I would say probably it's more around, say, 6 months that I would see that time to market. Additionally, they talk about the ROI and how long is it taking to realize that ROI. They claim it's around 14 months, and that is real. I would say that's right. Key point here is the hurdle rate. It'll take some time to realize your ROI because the cost that it's required and the benefits that need to be realized, that time horizon will be longer. Now, one of the things that we talk about when we start thinking about our ROI is the different types of it. And 18% of our engagements are seeing some type of customer satisfaction, employee productivity, or market share gains from these applications. And I think that's great. I would also say that I've experienced and seen both applications that are generating net new revenue streams or saving the organization a good amount of cost savings. So these benefits are definitely across the spectrum. And lastly, and the biggest concern I have about this study, and something I think everybody needs to realize, and we'll talk more in the success factors and risk section about this, is that 25% of our engagements are seeing some type of cost, data, or IP loss, or lack of governance and risk management. We're jumping into these engagements so quickly, we're not thinking about core things like responsible AI or how to secure these applications. And we need to bring that front and center. And we'll talk a little bit more about that during the success and risk section of this talk. Now that we understand both the size of the market and the health of the market, let's transition into the use cases and what do we need to build to get the greatest ROI. Let's jump into those use cases and share some examples that are common use cases that sit out there. One that I'm sure all of us are very familiar with is document retrieval, where we go into an app search engine, something like Bing Copilot. We start to ask queries of that application, and now we get a really nice literature review on topics such as generative AI. This helps our knowledge workers be much more effective and efficient in what they do on a daily basis. We can think of another great example of a common use case, and that's a customer service virtual assistant. When we talk about that assistance, it can be for tier one support, where no longer are we using an IVR to dial one for billing and two for customer service and three for tech support, but we're asking and talking interactively with a bot, and that bot is able to ask us questions, provide us information, and reassure us on some of the different factors that we should make when making buying decisions. Another great one is software code development or legacy migrations. We can take old code and convert it over into new platforms, or we can build code from scratch. Another great example can also be within our customer support area around contact centers and building knowledge assistance for live calls where our agents are looking for information that they can to help assist the customer to give them the best experience that they're looking for. When it comes to us creatives, if we want to use generative AI to build images, videos, to build new sales content for marketing, or to build emails and to build FAQs, we can do that with some of these tools. One of the ones that I really like the most is the call summarization and analytics. When we start to understand what the time of those calls are and the number, that's important. But if we can actually take those transcripts and summarize what was happening in those transcripts, some core topics that were discussed, and the resolution and sentiment that was in those calls, that is a very rich set of information to help us understand the customer experience that we're having within those call centers. Now, those use cases, one key thing we want to highlight are these are not recipes. We highly recommend not to use these as a way of experimenting with generative AI. We'll go into a little more detail when we talk about success and risk factors, but what we need to realize is that these use cases need to be tailored to your organization, to your set of applications, to your users. Don't just take a one size fits all solution and believe that's going to bring in great ROI. Now that we've showed you a lot of the different use cases for generative AI, let's talk about the business benefits. I really like to help share with you what we can realize when building these applications. And what we've done in this slide is really categorize the use cases by 4 different areas, and we'll go into the business benefits for each. So when you think about the first column here, content generation, this is where we're doing digital art or building out sales literature through our content generation capabilities, or personalizing different emails that might be sent to different groups or organizations. In this use case, we're really not seeing huge new revenue streams or cost savings being materialized. It's really a focus on delivering a differentiated customer experience. In content generation, you're probably not going to get customers willing to pay new revenue for it, nor are you going to see huge cost savings. But that customer experience is important and can help us with share. Next up is knowledge mining. Knowledge mining is really us going out and looking for documents within the corpus of documents we have within our enterprises, doing a conversational or knowledge search that sits out there, or taking a corpus of documents and summarizing those. That knowledge mining use case is definitely helping us realize productivity gains. And some of the findings we shared earlier in this talk highlight that. And this is going to be where we can really start having our organizations gain confidence in building new applications and bringing those to market. Next up is our virtual assistants. These are our co-pilots where we can bring them into the contact centers, virtual assistants, or doing things such as employee assistants. These virtual assistants are now where we will start seeing cost savings materialize. This is where our organizations will see the biggest gains. If we look at the spectrum of use cases from left to right, the lowest gains will be on the left, the highest on the right. And the final is agents. This is really where we'll start taking our agents and integrating them into our business processes, such as workflow management, document processing, or supply chain. And with these agents, we'll definitely see new revenue streams being materialized and large cost savings. Thus, we'll see the highest returns in these agent categories. Now, when we look at the generative AI horizon map, what we have to realize is where we've been and where we're headed. When we talk about a lot of things we've done in the past, content generation, data transformation, and knowledge mining have been used repeatedly and are great patterns to embrace and leverage within your organization. Those are what we typically see when we talk about those productivity gains that are materializing as of today. But where we're headed in our next horizon, where we are today, is in the area of virtual assistants, both our co-pilots and chatbots. These are where we're starting to see new revenue streams or cost reductions popping up and are definitely starting to materialize the ROI estimates that we have, and more importantly, generating returns. Where we're headed is more aspirational, and that is in the area of taking agents and integrating them into business processes. This is something we can do today, but at a very small scale. When we have a very simple, straightforward business process requiring one agent to get involved, that can be something we can achieve. And we'll see net new revenue being generated or savings being materialized. But this is more on the frontier of where we're headed, be it with new frontier models that are coming or new workflows that will be discovered. And this is where we'll kind of summarize the returns discussion. When we talk about ROI, for us to materialize that, we need to think of this as a matter of scale. If we're going to hit those high hurdle rates, we really need to start to move from an adoption state more into an enterprise readiness and automation state. Adoption means we're doing a lot of science experiments. We're doing point solutions. We're looking at one or two business processes and we're experimenting them to help out with our learning curve and with our enterprise gaining best practices. But if we're really going to see the returns, which I would say a majority of organizations have not fully realized, we need to start thinking about enterprise readiness, setting up a center of excellence to look across all business processes to see where we can bring in generative AI to increase the scale of adoption and also to look at all our business processes so we can integrate those into the processes to then see the gains when it comes to savings or revenue increase substantially and help shorten that time window for the returns. This is a key lesson I think we need to think through. And if we truly want to see the success of this market, scale is going to be a key factor. Now, let's take that next transition from the market to our implementations. When we talk about our implementations, how can we guarantee success and minimize our risks and start to adopt different best practices? I'll go through that now in the remainder part of this session. As business leaders, I want to share with you my success and some of the keys I've found that are very important. And that's what you'll see on the left side of the screen. But if you want further evidence and deeper research, you can look at the right side and see this study by the IDC. And this is a blog that was done by Elisa Taylor at Microsoft. She posted this in November of 2023. And it was a study that was validating the business value and opportunity of AI. And she gives you the 6 steps that sit out there. I'll give you a few of my own. When it comes to key success, as I've been saying about these recipe books, what we first need to do is understand our business strategy first before we get started. Where we usually see people stumbling is that quintessential putting the cart before the horse example. People want to get started as quickly as they can, start building out their science experiments, learn as they go, and then hopefully, if they build something, people will come. That strategy really never works. And thus, before you get started with your use case, build that minimal viable product, but understand who your audience is and what the gains they'll get from it. So be intentional about those rollouts. You're going to have many ideas, many examples. Look for the ones and prioritize the ones that are the most strategic and provide the most benefits. Then, as you start to build those, scale it throughout your business organization. What we mean by this is you're going to see one or two use cases that are maybe centered around customer experience, but we can scale that across the organization, not for that one individual use case, but for many others. And what we need to understand is that there's a set of different personas for each use case, and that can help us tailor those use cases to that audience. Feedback loops are really important. And as we start to build out these applications and have our first generation of them, we need to start quickly creating net new features out of those applications to help improve that user experience and to scale the adoption of that product. If people find that product being very innovative and always updated, you're going to see the growth rate of that application accelerate and reduce the time it takes to realize the ROI. So in the end, one of the things we want just to highlight from a technical perspective is that you need to get your data house in order, be it your data lakehouse, your data warehouse, or your data lake. You need to have a way of storing all this rich data in a format that allows it to be used for many different types of models. When we think about a data lake, we can think about it being serviced in any cloud. That's usually the ideal way of getting started. So success means let's prove what that ROI is to our MVP application. Let's scale that MVP application by increasing the number of users who can leverage it and giving them the top service and performance they're hoping for. And as we then start to realize ROI, reinvest that across the business so we can scale into other business units. Now, when it comes to risks, I think this is just as important. And one of the key things I'll highlight is Sam Altman's comments about building new products. He always says, you got to love something, not like it. And that's true with generative AI. When it comes to building generative AI features or applications, if you want to monetize them, your end users must love that. Why? If you are going to scale this application and get the user base that you need to justify the cost and to monetize it, you cannot just have 10 to 100 users leveraging this application. You're going to need the thousands of users. And thus, it's a very important piece to realize that whoever this user community is, if they love it, it'll grow. Another risk we need to think of is a reputational risk to the firm. There will be a potential where something can happen with this application that can diminish and tarnish the firm's reputation. And that risk you must mitigate and address. What that means is having the proper governance in place. So if something like that does happen, you can fix it. Just like Tao, a chatbot that Microsoft released back in 2017, unfortunately, a chatbot started to provide harmful racist content that sat out there. And we were able to address that, take it off the market, and learn from those lessons. And through that, really heal our reputation in that area and move forward. Next, we need to make sure we set proper expectations on AI and not be over reliant on it. And there's a great white paper that's here from our Office of Responsible AI at Microsoft that talks about how we need to make sure that our end users are not over relying those solutions and thinking it's an autopilot and not a co-pilot. And highly recommend to read that. Another great article is one that was published by Mark Rusinovich and a team about how they did some research on a particular attack style for a jailbreak called Crescendo. That Crescendo piece had a very high success rate in actually causing jailbreaks. So they are still a threat, but we need to build a safeguard into our systems to overcome some of those potential threat vectors. And lastly, a risk is not having not the right data scientists, but the right data engineering team ready for you. That data that we talked about earlier, you need to have a set of data engineers that can structure and store it in many different formats for many of the different end user applications that you'll create. So these can be potential risks that can help or that can cause and create those delivery cycles being very elongated. If we address these risks at the very beginning and focus on those success factors, hopefully we can take that, say, 18-month or that 12-month release cycle and bring it down to 6. So the best practices that we need to start thinking through. One of the greatest recommendations we can make is have a center of excellence around AI, machine learning, and generative AI. This will be important to make sure that your strategies are aligned with your different applications and to follow through and keep an eye on what that actual ROI is, or an eye on the prize. We also think it's important to have a set of champions who are your super users within the organization across these different units that can help champion new implementation, help give you the feedback that you're looking for, and start vetting some of the ideas that you have out there. We also want you to realize, as we talked about earlier, is these use cases are going to have different personas, and these personas are going to have different types of benefits and or pain points, and thus understanding what that persona and their experience is will help you tailor that actual use case to their individual needs. As we talked about data, we want to understand the quality of the data and some of the gaps within that data so that we can start to acquire the data that we need or organize it in a way that will help us bring that model to production. Now, as we talked about earlier, everybody's going to say we need to prioritize reskilling. But what we really need to start to do is understand some of the new work habits that your people will need to develop. The habit and the actual mentality that they take to their work is going to be very important. When we talk about prioritizing reskilling and establishing new work habits, we need to think that someone who wants to invest their time into learning AI and then will know it for the next 20 years is no longer realistic. We need to think about that growth mindset idea that we have within Microsoft and that Satya brought into our culture. That growth mindset is that we know what we need to go learn, and we know this is going to be a continuous journey that we need to be on. And as it evolves, we're going to be finding the right tools, resources, skill, and motivation to learn those pieces. So saying that we have a big gap in workforce, partly true. But we also need to make sure we have the right people who can quickly learn new things. And then lastly, as we've said a few times, when we build out that POC or MVP application, we want to make sure we understand the strategic benefits of that particular application. So then we can scale the actual user community and the adoption curve so that we can then start to realize our ROI and build out that digital platform by reinvesting it in our AI business. So I'm saving the best for last. Let's now jump into the monetization story when it comes to generative AI applications. I have a framework that I'll be sharing with you that I think has been proven and tested by different industry leaders, be it at Microsoft, Google, or Apple. These are just general examples that I'll be giving based on my personal experience I've had with these tools to hopefully help highlight to you how this monetization story works. Let's go first to the freemium example that sits out there. In a freemium offering, if we think about the iPhone or Android, we have the ability of using Gemini or Apple Intelligence to write text messages for us, sometimes in Shakespearean prose. Now, that text message is content generation. And when we think about that idea, not many users are really willing to pay extra to get a Shakespeare written text message. Thus, this is more of a freemium offer where we have a very task specific use case, and this use case would really help us drive more adoption of users into our product suite, increase our market share, and we can start to justify this by using open source small language models. In the next category, we start talking about taking these capabilities and embedding them into our existing applications. These are going to be things like knowledge retrieval. Here, I might be using, say, Google Drive or iCloud or OneDrive and doing knowledge retrieval, be it taking an image and asking for other images like this, a text string to see if I can find my latest W 2 documents, or me going out and doing keyword searches to find content in those repos. Now, here, what we realize is probably users have other search tools available to them today. They can't differentiate between some of the different advanced features. So, 9 times out of 10, these offerings will not be things that we can monetize. What it helps us with is customer loyalty. Or we find additional gains that sit out there. In the case of Android, their Pixel phones, or Apple with their latest versions of their iPhone, this helps accelerate that upgrade cycle and can find other ways of monetizing it. Next up is subscriptions. When we talk about subscriptions, here we talk about Copilot type of features, add-on SKUs that we can bring in, such as things like the M365 SKU that's available within the Microsoft suite. Here, we now need to start thinking about use cases that are not just task specific, but are general use models that can solve many different use cases that sit out there. Thus, we need to start going through private large language models that are needed. And we can start to focus on our return on investment because, as we said, there's going to be an additional fee, a premium service that they can have for that existing offering. Thereafter, we can jump into a more of a consumption-based model. This consumption-based model, I think, is really important to highlight. It is not a premium offering. It's a whole new set of application capabilities. Let's say within that Android suite, a new application that's being done by one of their developer communities for, say, a virtual concierge application that would help you book different types of shore excursions on cruises. So I bought a cruise line ticket. I want to understand by the different destinations some of the great things that I can do while on that location. It's like I have a travel agent in my pocket. And now through the Copilot features, I can start working with them to make those reservations. Here we have private large language models, but the token windows are going to be much larger. That context window that we'll be using will be something that will have a lot more tokens in them. And thus, we're probably not doing it as add-in SKU. We're doing it as a whole new product subscription. And that's where the consumption-based model is. I really want to do a price per token, more subscription-based. And lastly, the outcome-based. This is where we're bringing new solutions to market or on the frontier of actually helping bring new industry solutions that sit out there. Here, we probably be fine tuning those models. Maybe we're doing things such as cancer research, and we need to take existing foundation models and start to extend them and solve new use cases, or maybe help integrate them into new business processes. And this is going to then start to generate a whole new category, and more than likely, when we talk about revenue, a percent of that total addressable market. Now that's the monetization story. Hopefully that's crystal clear. So there's some different consumer examples. Where I like to go next is on the future market trends and help you understand one of the core takeaways as a business executive that you need to have. After the past few series, hopefully this is evident, but I just want to make sure this is crystal clear. When we talk about small language models to large language models and how best to size them, we do not want a one size fits all strategy. I see a lot of times everybody running to get the latest, greatest model, a GPT-4. Unfortunately, not all of our use cases need that. And maybe that's more fortunate for us because when we start thinking about the capabilities that we need, we don't need to go to the biggest size model. there might be some examples where a small language model is more than sufficient. One or two capabilities, all we need. But as we start to look at that application, and that application has a much richer set of capabilities that it needs, then we can upgrade it to more of a large language model as needed. So, as a business executive, please keep that into mind. A one size fits all solution is not there. We need to focus on what is the best fit model for the specific set of business use cases we're working on. Now, at the end, I want to share our learning resources. Here are some different thought leader podcasts that sit out there. I like to share these with you so you can listen to them over time and catch up to them, get other thoughts that are out there in the overall marketplace, and hopefully learn a little bit more on how to bring this into your organization. So I like to conclude this session. I like to help you realize how we can take AI magic and bring it into your organization and hopefully realize that within your company. Thank you very much and enjoy our conversation.